NerdandSon.
Hey, welcome to the Nerd and Son podcast. Crap, that just sounds bad. We need to figure out an intro, write out an intro.
Welcome to the Nerd and Son podcast. That's Nerd, I'm Son.
That's simple enough. There we go. All right. So we are a D&D discussion podcast with future gameplay and a whole bunch of other stuff. So
we'll see what happens.
Exactly.
Now, here's something I would like to pose to everybody who's watching and to you out of a personal conversation we had earlier, which was that I out-nerded you, which means that I believe we should change. I believe we should change the podcast name to Nerd and Dad. So.
Yeah. Okay, you got a one-up on me because I had no idea. And hey, I'll completely admit it. I did not know that there was a second ending to Army of Darkness.
So which ending did you think was the right one?
I only saw one ending.
Which one?
Where he went back to S-Mart and he fought the Demon Witch. Okay. Now, the second ending was only released in the UK. So I never had to do things. And also, too, when it came out in theaters 30 years ago, we didn't have options to view other clips and everything. And I never got like an updated DVD to see with the extra stuff and everything else on that. So I had no option.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm just curious how I knew about it. And you didn't.
Okay, this is one thing. We can probably write down a list of things that I know that you have no clue.
Yeah, but you're older than me, so you're a wizened old man.
So you're going to take this one thing and run with it and ignore all the other
100%. This is the only thing. Yeah. I may be a politician someday, so you know what? That's what I have to do.
That's your level of bullshittery. That's great.
I got to get good at it.
Okay. See, I will admit, I'm going to go online later and I'm going to pull that ending and take a look at it because I read about it. As soon as it mentioned it, I'm going, what the hell is he talking about second ending? So, I use your fancy computer devices on my phone. The power and wizardry of you young kids today. But yeah, it told me that he apparently drinks a potion and sleeps until the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds like a boring ending just from the text, but I'll have to actually see it to see.
I slept too long!
So, okay. Now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we have to be lighthearted and fun because we're going to get into some heavy topics today.
Yes, very heavy topics, and I'll just get it up here and... Basically, our topic is what happens when you have a player get uncomfortable during a gaming session. Okay? Now, there's been a lot of talk, and me and you have actually talked a little bit about some new things. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was gaming in the past, I ran into a few things, but I didn't take, or the people I played with, we didn't take a lot of feelings into account because... I don't know. I felt that there was a lot of separation between fantasy and reality. Okay. Plus, we didn't have a whole bunch of. We didn't know the reasons for things and way people feel now that we did way back then. There's just a big difference in the revolution on how feelings and everything like that, and how to. People feel about things. So this is going to be interesting and a learning aspect to me.
Yeah. And I don't think that necessarily like the opinions and like the experiences have changed. It's just that it's not as what's the word? We're already starting off great with me forgetting words. But it's become less stigmatized where you can talk about
yes.
your feelings, and it's easier to communicate, and it's more accepted.
Yes.
And that's the thing that is great, and I think is a great thing in our community that has really come along, and it has become a very mainstream within our community,
right,
to be more comfortable and more open and accommodating to people who have issues going on.
Yeah, and I will actually say, because when I was going through this and putting in notes for our conversation today and thinking about past history, different things to do, and this actually did not just stick with the gaming aspect, because if I look back at my history of management and how I did things, because I've been manager for way over 20 years, how I actually manage groups, different people, different opinions that people have, different and recognizing how people understood and saw things differently, which was a big growth for me over my tenure as management. Excuse me. So yeah, it's just growing and recognizing a lot of different things. So
absolutely.
Okay. Do we want to go over issues first, or what do we want to do?
Well, actually, so real quick, before we get into any of this and like the specific ways, because what I have brought to the table today are certain ways that you can that facilitate the communication, that facilitate you being able to say, hey, these are, it's a way to make things more accommodating, so that you can say, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, or I would prefer you not to say this kind of stuff, or bring this up. Right. And that's where this makes things easier. But at the end of the day, the point of all of this and the big takeaway is communication is key. Right. If you're feeling something, you got to say something, and, be an adult, and, just say what you mean. And sometimes that can be very hard, and it can be very difficult, which is why, as a player, you should be in a position where you feel comfortable enough to say these things, and you should have the courage to say these things. As a DM, you need to facilitate a table in which, and an environment in which it's easy for someone to say their feelings and say if something is making them uncomfortable, or they don't like something specifically. That is the big deal. The big thing is that it is a responsibility to everyone at the table to be open and honest with everybody, and to be accepting of other people's, we get in role play and everything, we can sometimes get into some heavy topics, and when we do, it is very important, and we'll get into some of the ways we can, where we can like figure things out beforehand on what not to, or what to bring up. But it can be, we can touch on a lot of topics that can trigger some things from past experiences from people, and that can be very harmful and detrimental to the group as a whole. If one person isn't having fun, the whole group's not having fun. Right.
And you got to make sure that everybody feels included and everybody is enjoying what's actually going on. So,
absolutely. So absolutely. Do you want to bring up anything first before I get into this? The top?
No, I meant, there's not really much else. I mean, we'll just go through and we'll kind of figure out what's going on here, because, there's some viewpoints that I have, which are, I'm going to say, probably a lot more archaic than yours. Since there has been a 10-year gap since I did my last role playing, and just the growth that I've had, knowing how everything is played out with your games and what you're talking about, and how just looking back in retrospective, some of the things I've done, because we had one issue with the player, which I'll bring up later in detail, and in hindsight, I could have handled that completely different. So, but it was also not as an excuse. It kind of took us, how do you want to say that? It actually took everybody at the table surprised, because everybody was on the same page except for one person, and we didn't know it until the very end. So, okay, so I'm going to let you lead, and then I will just go from there.
Perfect. So, what we're talking about today is things. What I'm going to bring up and what I have here are things that we can use to help facilitate a more open communication style. And one of the big things that was really influential in this was the X card. And it came out. It was brought about by I cannot say this guy's name. John Stavropoulos. I think that's it. But yeah, so
Stavropoulos. Yeah,
he came up with it. He came up with this in 2013. It was for like live, like Gen Con and convention stuff. And what it is you have an X card at the table where, like, if you tap it or you pull it up or something like that, and basically it says, "Hey, we're getting into territory that I am uncomfortable with. We need to skip this, or pause and figure out what's going on," right? And 2013 was when this came out and became it was really the first time this had become an official what's the word, like in the rules, comfort and a tool that could be used at the table, and actually supported by developers who are creating games and such. I think that this is a big turning point in our community and our hobby as a whole. And he released this under Creative Commons share-alike license. That's what it's, and so it can be used in many systems. Systems that have used this are For the Queen by Alex Roberts, Thirsty Sword Lesbians by April Kit Wash, and Visigoths versus Molgoths by Lucien Kahn. And also it was in when did that come out? It came out a couple pretty recently. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft by Wizards of the Coast. Right. So you have the biggest name in. I think that's a huge sign of where the community is on this. Where the biggest name in the space is using this system, and I think that's great.
Which I would be interested in going back, because I've not actually went through the newest Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I actually have all of the old Van Richten guides to Ravenloft that came out in the early aughts. Yeah, I think they came out in the early aughts, maybe late 90s. I got to pull them out, but they're nice, thick, red covered books. I think there's 4 of them in that set.
Actually, I have mine over in the other room.
Mine were little smaller books and stuff like that. I can pull it out when we get a break or whatever. I can show you, but regardless, I would be interested in seeing what the difference is between what that is and what my old stuff is.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know if the original people had a hand in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I know that the original people who wrote that setting wrote the Curse of Strahd campaign. So it was a nice through line where the same people were working on it. So this is not all a 100% great system. There are flaws, as with anything.
Yeah, anything is got something.
And the big thing with this one is that it was actually pointed out by when I was looking at it was pointed out by one of my biggest influences in this space, James D'Amato. He's the host of the RPG podcast, the Campaign Skyjacks, and author of the Ultimate RPG series.
Okay.
And he says that the biggest drawback, and I'm inclined to agree with him, is that this is a reactive system, not a proactive system. And so, this requires that in a moment where you're uncomfortable and, when your anxiety is at its highest, you have to act on it and stop something from happening,
Okay. Now, can I actually be devil's advocate right here just for a moment?
Sure.
Because I'm hearing all this, and I'm going to bring up me being a little bit older, and my perspective's a little bit different on some stuff. But I understand the X card, nice, everything's great on that. But it's talking about being reactive instead of proactive. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're running a Ravenloft campaign that deals with horror, and the stuff in the horror genre, wouldn't you know that as a player going into it?
So we're going to get into that.
Okay, because I mean, at that point, you can't really be proactive, but I mean, any more than, hey, this is going to be a horror campaign.
Yeah, but horror can be a lot of things, and it can encompass a lot of things, and some of those things can make people very uncomfortable and bring up lived experiences that are traumatic, right? Like actually, when if you're doing a good job doing horror, you're in the moment, and that's and anything, right? And so if you touch on something dramatic and you're being doing a good job, it could or anything, and I'm talking about this from somebody who doesn't really I don't really have any things that would trigger me myself. I know people that do, and so it's always good to check in with your players a lot, and so it's a socially difficult, but the point is that this is at like the height of a very socially difficult moment.
Okay.
And so this can be a very difficult thing to use when it's designed to be used, right? And this doesn't mean don't use it, don't have it in your games. Always have it as a safety measure. And worst case scenario, absolute worst case scenario, you talk to the DM afterwards and it can be changed for next time, it's okay to make mistakes. I live my life by, it's okay to make mistakes, just don't make the same mistake twice,
Yeah.
If you don't know that somebody has a trigger, if you don't know that there are certain things not to talk about or not to say, and you say it, just you can try to remedy a situation and move on. You can make sure that you don't bring that up again or something like that. But the big thing is that don't, if you consciously do it again, and if you are in a position, I'm talking about this from a DM's perspective because that's where I would come at this from. But if you are a player and you are in a position where your comfort line is being crossed constantly and knowingly, right? That's the big thing.
Knowingly is a bad thing. Yeah.
If you are not in a group that is a good fit for you, you should not be in that group. Like,
right.
It is, this is a social game. This is meant to be having fun. And if you're not having fun, then why are we here?
Right.
At the end of the day, we're here to play a game and have fun.
That is right. And you can get in groups, and I've actually seen this with DMs. Same thing when you get into a group with other managers, managing company. Very, very, very similar in a lot of aspects cross. Is you get people, I'm the DM, and then they take that power to their head. Yep. And they disregard everybody else really at the table because this is their game and they're going to run it this way. That becomes a problem because then players are not happy. You're not caring about their feelings, and the game eventually is going to fall apart.
Yep.
So you can't really do that, and the power trips and everything's out there. I've seen it happen multiple times too. Yep. Even at a table at Gen Con where we were playing a live open. So yep. Especially when you didn't want one there, but it happened. Okay. Yeah,
and that's and like it's like the X card was built for live play because you're dealing with strangers. You're not dealing people with you're comfortable with or you don't know. So it's always good to have that. And you don't know. You can't talk to people beforehand. You can't judge the comfortability of those people.
Right.
So it's always good to be on the safe side and have that system in place so that you don't cross that line. Moving on, right? We talk about being reactive and in the moment, right? And we've talked about afterwards. You can talk to the DM after. Talk to the DM, talk to the players after. But let's talk about before, right? I had someone bring up we were going to play a cyberpunk campaign. I unfortunately couldn't play in it because of my schedule and everything. I was super excited for this, but before we started, they gave us a pre-campaign sheet of like what everyone's comfortable with, right? And so it's an RPG consent checklist. I don't know where they got it exactly. This looks like it's from Monty Cook Games.
Okay.
From the Cypher system. Okay. So, basically, you have it starts with, if this game were a movie, its rating would be G, PG, PG-13, R, NC-17, or other.
Right.
But basically, you're setting the stage, and then it goes through a checklist, and you have green for bring it on, very enthusiastic. Yellow is okay if veiled or off stage, and being more careful and bringing it up ahead of time if it's going to be on screen. And then red, no go, absolutely not, right?
Okay.
And this is where horror comes up. If you bring it up, you have a lot of things that are in here: bugs, blood, demon eyeballs, gore, harm to animals, harm to children, rats, and spiders, right?
Yeah.
And then there's spaces to do extra stuff just in case, like, something would, something that's not on the list, right? And that's for all of these. And I think a good one is relationships, like romance and sex. There's different levels where it's, different levels of comfort and different, like, ways that can go. I'm not going to get into, like, these specifics, but and then there's a lot of mental and physical health stuff. And social and cultural issues, right? I think a big one, we're two white men. We can, we have people, especially growing up in Ohio, right? We know people. We can draw from experience to portray racism, right?
Yes.
So, in like Forgotten Realms where people don't like tieflings, we can we can portray that pretty well in game,
Right.
I'm not saying that we are racist. But you can draw from the cultural what's around us.
Right.
And that's on here.
Yeah, because it might not actually be racist, but there is a big thing. And Rhonda and I have talked about it a lot because we are in a mixed marriage, and wonderful lady. But there is a lot of bias, and it's not conscious. It's what they call unconscious bias. And it is basically because of what you're around and what you raise. So what you think might be acceptable, even though you don't have feelings like this, I'm better than this person, unconsciously, it comes across that way. And that's something you really have to take into account of everything you do. Dealing with anybody that you don't know, you can't automatically make assumptions about them. Okay, because you'd be surprised. I live in the country. I drive a pickup truck. I got a beard. Okay,
he's got one of those huge pickup trucks, like if it passed me on the road and I did not know that was my dad in there, I would make fun of the person in that truck.
Thank you. Okay, he'll believe that. And then they actually realize after the fact they have an assumption about me, and then they find out that I'm in a mixed marriage, and they're like, "What?" And they give you this odd look. They don't mean anything bad by it, but they don't realize at that particular time they made an assumption which was actually motivated, not an outgoing racism, but just your unconscious bias. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing, there was a very good anecdote that I heard online about Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
Right? Because it plays that Forgotten Realms. It plays, you're in Faerun on the Sword Coast, and people are racist to tieflings. If you are playing a tiefling, people are going to commit microaggressions against you constantly. They're going to say things, they're going to do things,
right.
And it's part of the game. And a black lady was saying online, she was like, you know, I don't want to experience this. I don't want to experience this all day, then come home and play this game to get away from all that and have it happen in game.
Right.
You know, and while I understand, you know, I understand there. I'm not going to sit there and say that it's, you know, I can understand where the developers came from to try to fit that into the canon. But if she were playing a home game, you know, if she were playing a home game and the DM was doing that stuff and she was playing a tiefling, you know, that would be, that is something that this would, you know,
right.
hopefully avoid in the first place. Or, you know, the X card could be pulled. And that is a perfect example of where these kinds of things and what these kinds of things are built for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of consideration and everything talking into that, because me and you have actually discussed in our campaign world that we are building about how we want to handle different races and everything interacting with each other, and trying to come up with some kind of decision on that, because I mean, it's not a good thing on there that is going to happen, but there's a lot of driving things that can happen that you can use in game for motivations for bad groups and everything. Yep. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things on it. So yeah, it's just one of those difficult
it's a
subjects.
Heavy topic, absolutely.
It's very heavy on that too. So yeah, I mean, you see it all alone. You see it in the movies. You see it in, like you're saying, in your games. It is out there, and I mean, you don't want to stick your head in the sand and hide from it, because it's very real. The more it is confronted, the less it gets, and a lot more knowledge people have about their unconscious biases and everything. So, yeah. And
if you ignore it, I'm gonna draw a hard line in the sand. If you ignore it and you try to pretend that it doesn't exist, you are part of the problem.
It is too. The only thing different, and I'll say, and you've actually met this up, and I think this is a lot of a generational thing. There's a lot of topics that was not discussed when I was your age or younger. You didn't discuss them. If you did, then you were ostracized about it. So, trying to get past that, because I'm 50. I'm just a little bit older than you, but that's still a short time of life where changes are happening. So it's not going to like end and be everything great tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, it's a big progression, and a lot of change has happened from when I was growing up and becoming my own person in the 80s and to today. So yeah, it made good strides, but yeah, there's still a lot of out there. And since we deal in this game and we deal with people of all ages, we're going to have to actually take those kind of things into account. So
absolutely.
All right. What else you got?
That is all I have brought. What I wanted to talk about, you know, the 3 stages of when you can bring these things up, what kinds of things. I know you have some things to discuss, and stuff like that.
Well, let's go ahead and take our first intermission. Woo! And we'll get back into it and go from there.
Hi guys. If you want to take a break from role-playing and watch someone burn their face off while eating hot peppers, head on over to YouTube at 13 Peppers and like and subscribe. And if you want to grow these peppers yourself, you can actually purchase these seeds at 13peppersbyralph.com. With that, have a good day.
Okay, we are back. Now, we want to actually do a disclaimer on this second half here. We're going to get into a bunch of discussional topics that discuss different issues and in-game scenarios that we've actually played, in-game scenarios that we actually might build. So we're going to have different concepts that we're going to talk about. Some things could actually be disturbing on what we do, and then we'll make comments on how we can actually maybe possibly change it up, how we can actually introduce this to people where it might affect them on a personal level, but we can get into different aspects of the game and everything. So, okay. Whew. You ready to swim this muddy lake here? Wow, you just got quiet. Okay, awesome. All right.
Oh.
Okay, so first thing that we're going to run into that could actually be an issue with the game and dealing with fantasy worlds is the religious aspect. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we can actually sit down and talk about the whole satanic panic that they had in the 80s, which is something I lived through, which was very, very interesting with your chick track comics and all that kind of stuff. But yes, you're going to have certain people that's actually going to take issue with religious aspects because they might think they're like false idols. Don't want to worship them or anything like that at all. And with a lot of the different fantasy worlds, you're going to have different pantheons that you're going to actually be dealing with, which is going to come up with different religious aspects. I'm not quite sure, unless you're playing a world that has no kind of spiritual influence, which would take out a lot of different character classes, that there'd be a way to actually avoid that. Unless you want to actually have that maybe in like the background. But if you have a character to either a paladin or a cleric, that's going to become up to the very front and center because there's characters of that specifically.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I like to take I kind of like personally take gods out of the equation, you know? I put in that I submit that a paladin or a cleric, right, they can believe in whatever. It's the belief that gives you the power, you know?
Okay.
So you can have somebody of belief, and you know they can be whatever, but it's their belief in that is what gives them that power. Like, you know, in Spider-Man 2, he starts losing his powers because he's having troubles, you know. But that's a way that you can take the god out of the gods and play without that.
Okay.
But, you know, that's just my personal preference because I don't like touching all that. You know,
right. Well, it kind of makes it hard in that aspect too, because I ran a campaign for quite a number of years that dealt with the changeover from Faerun in 3.5 to 4th edition, where you had all of the chaos magic, everything else like that, and the change in the actual gods. And we actually made that part of our campaign, where we ended up off plane, but we ended up on a world that they didn't know until the end, because the map kind of grew as they did, that ended up being the hand of Mystra. I'm sorry, Mystara. Okay.
Mystra is what she turned into after.
It's from Mistral. Wow. Mistral? Yeah, Mistral.
No.
Yeah. Mystara or Mystra? Yeah, there was some little change.
No, it was Mystara to Mystra.
Okay, Mystara to Mystra, yes. But we ended up
You know what, Jamie, look that up.
But we ended up on her like severed hand. So it's almost like in Guardians of the Galaxy, where you're actually in the Skull of Nowhere. Okay, they would actually have in the astral realm relics of the gods. So we actually played on that. And they had a little character in the game which was her actual aspect of a god in like child form, which they didn't know about. So that was something that and it was kind of central to the actual game itself. I mean, we weren't sitting there, we weren't doing worshiping rituals or anything else like that, but it was still a big part of the actual game.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's all about setting, you know. if you have a setting like Forgotten Realms and Faerun, where the gods are inexorably tied to the setting, right? Every big bad is either a dark god or trying to become a god,
right.
or doing something for a god, a dark god. Like that's kind of the vibe. That's the vibe of the setting. It is very much pulp fantasy, and in any pulp adventure, you have to raise the stakes, and what is raising the stakes more than the god of death or destruction, and so that's where and for those games and stuff, that works.
Yeah. I mean, also too, from a religious aspect, if you're actually going and trying to be the heroes of a village, you might actually have like a evil cult that you have to deal with, that you have to go out and destroy and everything else like that too. So, I mean, that's not dealing specifically with the gods, but that's dealing with basically very religious people.
Yep.
Be it good, be it bad, but yeah, that's going to be in there. So I don't know. I find it very difficult of actually taking that out, and I almost feel that if we are doing a specific role playing game that is going to be Dungeons and Dragons that actually deals in a world, it's kind of hard to avoid that. I mean, I know there's other settings out there that don't have like the religious aspect, like what you were saying, and preference and stuff like that too. But I personally think it's kind of hard to actually take that stuff out. Not making it a priority, yeah, that's not a problem. But I still think with the way the game is actually set up, that's still an issue. So, all right. Next thing really want to do is talk about like personal beliefs. Okay. And dealing with people. And I was like, what kind of personal beliefs would actually interfere with the game? Okay. And my first thing I came up with when we were talking about is like witnessing like an in-game ritual. Like you're going through a dungeon crawl and of a evil cabal that is down there, but you come across a ritual that they're actually performing, and when you're doing theater of the mind and you're sitting there describing everything that's going on, how much is that going to be an issue when you are taking like an evil ritual and you're describing everything that's going on? How much of that would actually be a trigger? Because at that point, you want to actually give me personally the best description of the area and everything's going on, besides the placement, what's going on, what's exactly happening, and really building up that picture. How much of an issue would that be, building up a picture like that?
I mean, honestly, and all of this is up to the this is all up to the preferences of everyone at the table. What everyone's comfortable with. If people are comfortable, like the opening of Diablo 4, where there's the ritual and like the blood and the skin of all the sacrifices are coming together. It is creepy and just visceral, and it is such a good opening, and it's so disappointing that the rest of the game follows that opening.
But it's also
the opening cutscene is so good.
Yeah, it is very good, because I saw that. That was awesome. But you also go into, you're actually going to be playing a game that's called Diablo. So, to me, you kind of know what you're getting into when you're getting into it. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, the comment that you made earlier about the lady that was actually playing Baldur's Gate 3, that she didn't know that because Baldur's Gate 3, it really doesn't discuss that until you get into the game, and then you actually realize that. Because you got some people, because the popularity of that game, which have never played a tabletop role-playing game, so they would have no idea about what the ongoing climate is in Faerun.
Yeah.
So
that's fair. Absolutely. And if you're going to play, I've never seen a Faerun campaign that does not involve cultists. There's always you go from goblins to cultists. Like that's your next step up.
Close to it, but yes, exactly, because they're like a bandit. They're just easily fodder. Yeah. And that's anything. I mean, that's Greyhawk. I mean, that's Mystara. Cumuculus, that campaign, all that. So yeah, that's just a common thing. So
it's just, it comes with the territory when you're dealing with pulp. A lot of the main settings are pulp fantasy.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get that vibe.
And I think some of these are easier if you know what your players are. Like, for example, at the table we had the same set of people for 10 years.
Yep.
We had some people come in and out, which I'll discuss one of them here in just a moment. But the majority of them, I had the same 4 players at my table every week for 10 years. So by then you actually know what they like, what they don't like, and they kind of get that issue out there. The issues
that's going to be on the Nerd and Son bingo card is every time you say the same 4 people at the same table every day.
I'm going to say that all the time because that's a feat. That's a feat. That's a feat of awesomeness.
Bingo.
But yeah, having new people at the table and interacting them, because sitting there and doing when you go to Gen Con and you're doing the D&D Open and you're dealing with other people at the table initially, and you have to actually come together as a group to actually move forward to the different rounds. If you don't mesh and you don't know them, it becomes a big issue. So, but I don't know. There's some things you can come up, which I can actually see be an issue if you've never come across it before, and also dealing from like old school fantasy. Okay. And I'll start off here on a couple things. Like, for example, if you take a look at artwork for fantasy women, okay.
Yep.
Because a chainmail bikini protects chainmail bikini protects everything, regardless of only seeing 3 links. But yeah, just the physical portrayals and everything of that, even the physical portrayals of the men for all the ladies out there.
Actually, there's an argument to be said. The male gaze is not just about women. It affects men too, right? Because like comic book characters like Batman and Superman, they are not drawn to be the standard that women want to see. The male characters in these things are drawn to be what men want to see. They're all big, they're all tall, buff, broad shoulders, right? And I'm not saying that women don't want to see that, and that's not appealing to women. But the gaze and the point of view that it is meant to appeal to is men who want to see that, who want to go, I want to be that,
Yeah. So and that's more, and to me, from my opinion, that's more of I wish I was like that, not
exactly
I lust that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the thing is it's but the point is that that male gaze and that like that does not just affect like how women are portrayed. It affects everything. It is seeped into every part of everything we do, and that's why I think that a lot of people get upset when people bring up when something is racist or something is problematic, is because people bring it up a lot because it's everywhere.
It is. And you got some people that brings up a disturbing topic, regardless of what it is, just out of spite to get a rise out of people. Which
that too. Yeah.
That is absolutely wrong, and you see that all the time, especially online and all the social networks and everything like that. Because I browse my Instagram, I browse the Facebook, my Threads, all that fun stuff, and you see
I had
people
to delete Twitter. I deleted Twitter. I'm off Twitter now.
I haven't actually been on X in forever. X now. Yeah. But yeah, you see that, and I see so many things that are like, you're just doing this for a rise, just to get views, and that's it. And you're not really helping the issue at all.
Absolutely.
But
exactly.
But yeah, just the fantasy on that too, and yeah. Also, too, some of the personal things and everything, we can go back to the satanic panic, is one thing that I actually didn't pay attention to until I was actually going and back and watching a thing on the satanic panic, because I lived through it, I remember it and everything like that, but some of the finer details, it kind of just glossed over. And apparently Wizards of the Coast and everything, actually changed the name of their demons and devils, so it didn't actually say demons and devils in the original Fiend Folio. I have it someplace. I don't remember right offhand. I wanted to pull it, so it's someplace in the bookcases or in the files.
Jamie, look that up.
I'll have to figure that out, but yeah, just to try to get different things there. And yeah, it's just moving from one thing to another. How some things in the news just goes and blows things out of proportion. So, and then I don't know, one other thing I can think that could be issue, but as a DM, you would actually know this about the person. If something happens, like for example, you have a personal family member that has a death in their family, something close. You want to make sure that in your game as a DM, you're not going to be crossing that bridge to even be kind of close to what happened, especially if it's tragic. It can actually do it. Like, for example, if somebody passed because of cancer, do you really want to do something where somebody is disfigured by a ailment of some type? You got to kind of consider those things, and that's kind of things I brought into my mind when I was writing this list here, which could actually be an issue. And then also, too, how you want to give your tone of the game, because if somebody had a pass, and they're trying to get to the game for the escapism, because I love doing this stuff because it's an old world, kind of build that. I kind of like the escapism. You don't want to actually have something that is going to go against that person's escapism because they're grieving.
You don't want to pull them back snap back to reality.
Exactly. You want to make it fun and maybe lighter sessions for a while, something like that, until they feel like they want to get back into it or anything. And you can have like an off-table discussion away from everybody else, so you're not bringing everything up too. So, yeah. I mean, and I also think too, depending on the players and new people, and I'm going to ask you this question because kind of what we talked about there. I guess talking about a game with the new people and new people coming in, because if this world that we're building, I'm going to be doing a DM for the world because I really want to do that. There's a couple people which I've met before, but I've never played with them. Okay. And I guess I'm going to have to sit down and actually go, hey, what kind of boundaries, what kind of things do you not like? Anything like that. So I don't actually cross that, because I do like describing a scene, especially if it's during a battle and something's happening and you have blood and guts and gore. Different things spraying.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the pre-campaign like survey thing that I had. The consent form is great for that, because you don't know the people I know personally that are going to be showing up, and I don't know the people that are going to be showing up from whoever you bring. It's not in good standing to go, hey, what are your deepest traumas? And so that consent form's good. And, another thing about that thing is that, like, if you don't know something that's a trigger for somebody else and they just bring it up and they bring it up in that form, like that's a safe space. Do not don't try to press them about it.
No, you don't press anybody about that. And then you also know what lanes that you can go in without a problem. Yeah, you do that and everything like that, because I dealt with people in the past that somebody would confide something into that person, and then they'll turn around and this would be another manager. Okay, you'll have an employee confide something into that other manager, and then that other manager would come over and talk to me and then tell me everything. I'm like, well, what the hell? Why are you doing this? You're a shitty ass manager.
You're a shitty person, yeah.
Yeah, but some people just like talking, and that's what they find interesting. And if they can actually talk about somebody to make themselves feel better, because it's because they want to make themselves feel better, they want to talk bad about something else. Yeah, you're just a shitty person. Run into that crap so much. But I don't know. I like really describing in the games, describing the scene, getting really nasty, trying to get, and it is also too, because if you're in that and you're kind of close quarters fighting, you kind of want to invoke as a DM a reaction in your players. Okay. And I'm going to give an example here. Like, for example, you got a fighter and, okay, you have a big bad stuff like that. He's coming down on the a thief that's kind of trapped into the corner here, and he's about ready to drop his sword down. But you have the warrior, heroic warrior, come in, and at that particular time, he actually takes the sword and actually cuts the front of the big bad. Okay, slices him open right through his armor, splits him perfectly. The thief and everything sees this, feared for his life in front of his eyes, and all of a sudden his entire face and body is covered in blood of that big bad from it being sliced open. Okay, I mean, that's kind of generic, so I haven't really built the scene or anything that much, but it kind of gives an idea of that. And now you have an employee. I'm sorry, not an employee, but you have there's my management coming in. You have a player that is now covered in gore. And that's starting to excite it. That's starting to give a reaction from them. How are they actually going to feel in that particular scene?
You have to figure out if you are early 2000s DC animated, late 2010s DC animated, or Invincible, like the different levels that you are. Right? You have to figure out what level you're at.
That third stage was a jump, I will say that.
From the end of this, oh no.
Your Invisible section was a jump.
No, that because they got real crazy towards the end. Like, they rebooted their animated universe stuff.
Yeah,
but like there was a point where they got wild with it, and like they killed off everyone.
Yeah,
like it was I bet it was probably part of that. But like, yeah. And so, like, you got to figure out what tone you're setting and what like level of everything you're gonna be at.
I mean, every once in a while, you get. It's interesting to watch something that you hear about that you don't know anything about, that you're expecting one thing, and all of a sudden you get something else, like Happy Tree Friends. If you've not watched that animated, that one is a little disturbing if you've not prepared for what it is.
I think that since that has come out, it has lost its teeth.
Yes, yeah, that was.
I think that with everything else that is around, it was very much of its time. Happy Tree Friends came out, and because it wasn't, because that wasn't the standard that was set.
Exactly.
And it was very unexpected. But I things have changed now. I don't think with how online these children are, I don't think that they would bat.
No, but you do have younger kids, and if you go in expecting one thing and all of a sudden stuff like that, because I mean, I was hearing online about parents taking their kids to see an animated movie, okay, and come to find out it's Sausage Party. Yes, that's an animated movie, but that is not for kids.
Yeah, but that's also another part of that is media literacy. You gotta, if you're gonna show your kids, you gotta look up something about it.
Right.
And also, again, it's only gotten worse since I was a kid. And when I was a kid, I remember in middle school, 2 Girls, 1 Cup was being shown around. Right, like that's not cool. And being a young guy on the internet, I had to be careful about what links to click, or else I'd get goat seed. Right? These are the things that happen, and it's only gotten worse.
Yes.
Which is why I say that Happy Tree Friends has lost its edge.
Yes. You get your goat seed, or you get your Rick rolled. Yes, you got.
Yeah, but Rick roll is the safe version of goat seed. It is that same joke, but watered down and diluted.
Well, here's the other thing too, and it brings across a point. Yeah, it brings across a point you just made. You're talking about parents should actually be a little bit more educated before they actually go in and take their kids to see stuff. So if you're actually having a game and you're going to a Dungeons and Dragons game, I feel you should kind of know what you have what the expectations could be. I mean, some things can get a little bit more violent than what you can expect here, because depending on the scene and setting up the situation, and we'll just talk about another.
And if you have a bard in your party,
yes, yeah. But like, for example, if you're setting up a scene where you had a bunch of bad people come into a town, you might have women that's got violated. You could have men that got violated. That's a hard subject to talk about, but that also sets a scene about what these type of people are that you want to actually go and chase down and get rid of. I mean, that's a hard thing. The other thing that's really hard, and this is a personal thing to me because I actually came across of it in a book that James Patterson wrote that I wasn't expecting, okay? Sitting that there, and then all of a sudden, a kid got killed off.
Oh, yeah.
Like a 9-year-old kid got killed off, and was not expecting that because... it just completely wasn't expecting it. And yes, it did add overall to the story and building on that and reasons and everything like that, but it still was not an expectation at that particular time.
And that's when things can be.
And I think that was probably because he wanted to excite a reaction of the people reading it at that particular time. So, and when I actually,
but you can have an exciting and very visceral thing, but you have to, you can properly set those expectations and set the tone so that it doesn't come out of left field, because there's a difference between a twist and a surprise. Yeah, and you should properly set things up before things happen.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know the story. I don't know what happens, and I don't know if it's well set up or not. But it's, from the sounds of things, it sounds like it comes out of just out of nowhere.
Yeah, I felt it did. But on that too, I think
Jimmy Patty, if you're listening right now, I have nothing against you. I have great respect for you, but I don't read your books, so I can't comment on what happens.
Oh, I do think though that you should not be crossing as a dungeon master some of these things with brand new people. So you got brand new people in the party, 100%. Some things, stuff like that, like your physical violations, your pain to the children, issues like that. I don't think any of that stuff should actually be crossed. Once you have a party and you know what everybody is inside there, after quite a while of playing with these people, then you can set up different scenarios to really push your players at that particular time.
You can feel the vibe once you know people. But also, if you do want to broach some of these subjects that can be difficult, again, I'm going to go back to that pre-campaign form that you can fill out, and you can see, this thing is clear, we're good to go. And you can bring those things in because it's not on the list of things that, and that list, when people say, yeah, sure thing, you can go ahead and do that. I mean, if you really, really want to, you can pull from that for ideas, but you shouldn't go. I feel like personally, you shouldn't go out of your way to pull things like that.
No, I don't think that you should, because I meant just scanning over the form and everything. I think that's bad play to pull those ideas and everything like that. I think as a DM, you should already have 3 or 4 different scenarios in your head that you can actually play out. That kind of steers away from all those things and doesn't touch those. But
sometimes that's the game you're playing.
And sometimes it is, because I mean, as a dungeon master and being with the players that I had at my table for 10 years, I'll say that again.
Bingo.
There's a point as a dungeon master, you want to push boundaries. You want to do something that you haven't done before. You really want to get a reaction from your actual players and make it a memorable session. I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, the horror game that we played, where they had a person decided they want to come run out into the out of the house that started to burn. He was just freaking out, and then all of a sudden you have the big bad throw the guy's bloody head back through the window at him. Mm-hmm. That got a reaction out of the players because that was not expected, and it kind of set a completely tone. I mean, it set a very hardcore tone.
Major tone shift.
And as a DM, I was actually very happy to get that reaction from the players. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm just because I knew my players, I knew it wasn't going to be a bad reaction from them, and that was something memorable to them also. So, yeah, it's kind of do that. But you have to really know what your players are to be able to push those kind of things on them, because ultimately you want, as a dungeon master, to have your players immersed into the game. Yep. Okay, absolutely. You want the full immersion, their buy-in, and everything else. Them playing, them experience things, them actually doing the stuff that you would like them to do in the game, and being a part of it. And if you can if you do something that's not going to be positive for them, regardless of what that is, then you're going to lose immersion, and then that doesn't make that game fun for that particular person. You got one person that's not having fun. That kind of ruins everything for the rest of everybody. Okay?
Absolutely.
So, and I'll go in because I kind of teased this earlier. The issue that we had at the table is I was working with an individual who's talking about dungeon mastering. He played Dungeons and Dragons years ago, and he heard about my game that we were running, and I'm like, hey, we can always use another player because we brought people in and out, friends that we know that people wanted to play. It was just hard to get consistent people. But he started playing. He had previous experience with Dungeons and Dragons, older stuff. And then we started playing, and he came in on, I think, the 4th or 5th game session that he attended to, and he just came in and says, you know what? And this is what kind of threw us as a thing that we wasn't expected. He says, you know what? I appreciate you guys letting me into the game, okay? But I had a conversation with God last night, and he says what I am doing here is on the verge of being evil, so I cannot participate in your game anymore. Okay, we didn't say anything at that particular time. It's like, okay, we appreciate you coming in, letting us know everything like that. We're nice, said bye, didn't say anything mean or anything like that, and then he left. Okay, and then me and the table, we kind of discussed because we were kind of really thrown off, especially me, because I'm going, we're not actually doing anything like evil or outright and stuff like that.
That's exactly that somebody who was doing something evil would say.
So, I mean, everybody was kind of thrown off in left field about that. And I think because we had been together for so long, we had our own understanding. And our ultimate conclusion is when we went back and just looked at how he was playing, we think that that particular individual had an issue separating fantasy from reality. And not trying to say that bad, but yeah, I mean, I'm going to go into the fantasy and the Dungeon Tantra world to escape. It has the own little immersion and everything in that too. And I don't think that everybody would has the same kind of ability to go ahead and go, okay, game's done, let's go back and take care of our reality and kind of leave that separate.
Yeah.
And we think that's kind of what the kind of deal with is. He was getting into it, he was really liking stuff like that, but then that was conflicting with his reality, and that's where it kind of came from. I could be off in what I was doing, or we could have actually done something that we didn't feel was anything wrong that he did.
Yeah.
Or anything like that too. So I mean, that was just interesting because we really didn't understand that, and being taken off left field because in all the other previous games we didn't have any kind of inkling that there was an issue. So I don't know, it's interesting too when you come across that. I mean, it's kind of hard to understand what some of the issues can be until you experience them like that.
You know, that comes back to the top of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, communication is key. It's all about talking. What's going on? What's happening? How's how you're feeling about everything. It's all super important. All super. You got to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yes, exactly. So,
and there's unique challenges that make sure everybody's on the same page when you're coming into a group that's been together for years, and you got to figure out, like everybody there becomes a certain language between you guys where you all understand, you have in jokes and hidden and little meanings behind everything, and you're making references to things that happened years ago. And in that situation, sometimes you're like, I don't want to ruin the flow, and ask what's going on.
Exactly, because like you're saying, the inside jokes and everything like that. Because I could still quote sayings that was said at the table that have no meaning to anybody.
I can give you an example, literally from last weekend, where we were hanging out, because we so the week before, or not the week, like a couple days before, we had went and saw The Creator, which is a really great movie about like AI robots, and what it means to be human and all that other stuff. Real good, and it made us cry. But while the whole thing of the movie, they're talking about the child, the child, that take care of the child. And so we all had that. We were like, the child, and we were all making jokes like that. And then a couple days later, we go over for a little barbecue, and a couple of the guys got there early, and they were watching Rogue One, and they got to the part with the message, the pilot, right? And so they added that onto the joke, right? And so they were like, and so every time, like every couple little bit, they would just be like, the child, the message, the pilot, right? We had no idea what the fuck was going on. I'm not gonna lie to you. There were a couple of us that came in later, and we came in and we did not know. We didn't understand this inside joke that had just shown up out of nowhere, and and this is in the little friend group, and like we were all here for all of it, and in the span of like an hour, we had become disconnected, and finally, one of the guys, and it wasn't me, was just like, what the fuck are you guys talking about with the message, the pilot? Like, what is this?
Well, it's okay, because I can quote a meme right now, and I have no idea what the origin is. Okay?
Oh, what is it?
What is it? There was 3 hams.
Oh yeah, I can't tell you that.
I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea what that actually is a reference to, and things like that too. But yeah, we also had a thing where we were getting out of tight situations because we actually played a game one day called Stupid Duel. It's a card game. Yes. Excellent, where you just make up different scenarios. You got a third party that says, hey, I accept that, I think that's believable, or bull crap and stuff like that. And from there was a episode where he was trying to get out of all these fish whales or whatever coming down to smother him, and he decided to swim up through them and stuff like that to escape them. And they looked at me because I was the person that was going, hey, I was like, you know what, just making fun. Yeah, that's believable. And one person's table's like, that's bullcrap. And just played the game. And then every time we actually did something and they escaped, okay, they'd make a reference every once in a while to Joe's escape of the whatever he swam out of. See, I can't even remember what they reference there.
That's the thing, but that's like, it's one of those things. It's like, even, it's so hard to have somebody join in the group because at a certain point you're making these references, and the references become the joke, and you reference the reference, and eventually you forget what the whole thing was about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the joke is still funny.
Gotta love it. Love it. So, all right. So, I don't know. You think we've covered everything?
I think so.
All right. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else or really...
Be cool. Don't be a dick.
Yes, that is the truth.
That's it.
You don't want to be a dick.
Mm-hmm. Rule of cool and cool G. Take that back. Scratch that. Reverse it. Whatever. The rule of cool includes you as well.
Yes. That's awesome. Okay, so all right.
Bye.
Yeah, I think that's
Get
it.
out of here. I'm tired of you being in my room.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and call that for the night. Is there any place that they are able to locate? Well, actually, for the podcast, if you want to give us any kind of messages, feedback, or anything like that, send us an email at NerdandSon.
Only nice things, please.
Yeah. Well, any kind of critiques,
Only
you can send
nice
that too. Our email address is NerdandSon at gmail.com. That's going to be the best way to actually leave us a message. You can go ahead and follow us on a bunch of different social groups and out there, and our name is NerdandSon on that we've set up.
Absolutely.
Leave us messages. Hopefully these things are going to be on YouTube. I know we're going to be doing audio podcasts for everything else initially on that, but other than that, my name is Ralph. I am Nerd.
And I'm Connor. I'm Son.
All right. And we want to say thank you all very much. And you guys have a very, very good day.
Bye.
NerdandSon.